Hello. Welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. Together, we explore topics of interest to in-house lawyers. We cover career, practice tips, leadership, the future of law, mental health, legal tech, and much, much more. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They're an act of courage. Want to get the most from this conversation? Ask questions, comment, follow, say hello. In short, engage. Finally, have fun. In-house legal practice is a serious business, but you don't have to take yourself seriously. Let's begin. Here's your host, Olga Mack.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you all. I have a treat for you today. I have a guest I've known for a long time, before I was in legal ops, actually, well, before he was in legal ops, and it's his Thanksgiving week. So I think it's a perfect time to have conversations with friends I've had for a long time, who I've seen grow and thrive and lead. And without further ado, Adam, welcome to Notes to My Legal Self. We wanted to do this for a long time, and we finally found the time. So welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Olga. I'm Adam Becker. I am the Director of Legal Operations at Cockroach Labs, which is a private technology company based in New York. And Olga is right. We have known each other for a very long time before either of us were involved in this in-house legal ops world. How did I even get here? That's what Olga wants to know. I met Olga when I was still working at a law firm. I come from big law. I was a law firm associate for a brief period of time, then went into the, quote, other side of the firm, where I was a global recruiting manager at my first firm, and then moved to office operations, administration, and management on the West Coast. And that's where Olga and I really intersected for the first time in life. And then from there, I came back to New York for a while, and I did professional development at another large firm. So most of my career has been at law firms. The past 9+ years, I've been in-house. So I came into legal operations directly out of 10+ years at a law firm or at law firms, and went pretty big and started my in-house career at MetLife doing legal operations for the U.S. Law Department. Was there for a number of years. Went to an entertainment company for 2 years during the pandemic and started up legal operations there. And then I came here to Cockroach Labs, which at the time was a startup which truly had no legal operational function at all. So really took on the chance to do something new.
I love it. And much more than that. In addition, you also have some entanglement with CLOC.
Some entanglement. I happen to be on the board of directors of CLOC, which is also another incredibly wonderful opportunity that I've been given in this world. It's something I'm really thankful for, and it gives me the opportunity to meet people like Olga regularly and other people out there who are watching and talk about legal ops and the ecosystem and what's happening and really help drive change and adoption and expansion of our profession across the industry.
I love serving with you on the education board of CLOC. Your passion for the future of this profession and the future of in-house, just so inspiring. How did you get there, especially given your law firm beginning?
I got here, I think we all got somewhere through a combination of risk, timing, and going for it. So I got to in-house legal because I had returned to New York from California and went to another law firm. A friend of mine who was in-house called me and said, we're opening this new position. I don't know what it is, but you'd be my peer and you should apply for it. And I said, I just left California. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm no longer a practicing lawyer, so I thought the in-house role was closed. He sent me the job description, and it was the first time I saw a legal ops role. I said, okay, I can actually do this job. I never knew it existed. It probably didn't exist until that time. This was 2013 maybe, let's say, 10 years ago, longer. And we had a chat about it, and it really wasn't the right role for me. But once I learned about it, it was the first time in my career that I made an active decision about what I wanted to do next. and I learned everything I could about what was happening in-house and started learning what I needed to know to make that jump. So preparing myself for when the timing was right and something opened up.
I love that. It's interesting. Sometimes you find the thing, and a good timing is as important as a good substantive decision. Really, both have to align to make it a good opportunity. But I want to go a little bit back. At some point, you were actually a practicing lawyer. Before you even saw the other side of law, and then the other side of law firm being the in-house. So let's take that step by step. Let's stop practicing law. When did you and how did you think, gee, I can do something else with this thing called law degree?
I feel for anybody who wants to have that thought conversation with themselves. It's actually really hard to do. And for me, I went into big law with the same expectations as everybody else at the time. I'll go for 2 or 3 years, make some money to pay off my loans, and then go do what I want to do. And none of us know what I want to do means, but we think there's a time expiration for being a big law associate. Things go by really quickly in life. During my 5th year review, my boss partner and I were talking about counsel and partnership next. And I said, oh my God, how did this happen? I've been here way too long. So I knew that I really didn't want to be doing the law part of things for a while, but I really liked working at the firm. So I had to sit down first and parse out what did I like and what didn't I like. And I did the old school thing of making a list.
I am so curious. What was on that list? I do the old school too. I love lists. I do them all the time. I don't do them on piece of paper. Full disclosure, I have very few pieces of paper in my life. But what was the yes and the no? What was the pro and the con?
What do I like about my job? What do I not like about my job? And when you write it down, and this is different because now we don't use paper as much, there is a thought process that makes your brain do it a little bit differently. And when I was critically analyzing my day-to-day, I liked the environment. I didn't like the practice of law. So the question then becomes, what do I do here? And that's when I started to explore professional development, recruiting. I was always involved in recruiting, but the other parts of law firm life where you're not practicing. And this was a time when if attorneys left practice, they went into maybe professional development, but most big law associates practiced or went in-house. And that was the only thing that I knew as the traditional way of doing things.
So that seems like a risky move. It's risky in terms of, hey, what is a career path? Hey, what is a pay hit? Hey, what do I do after this law firm? Because I've gained reputation here and they're kind to me now. What about my next one? So how did you think through that? You have a list, you have good and bad, pros and cons. And then you also, someone who invested quite a lot of time, energy, and resources to be where you are, to have your law degree. And I'm sure you were not asleep behind the wheel. It wasn't lost on you that you're taking a risk.
No, absolutely. The financial risk, of course, it's a pay cut, right? From being a big law associate. Pretty much anything is, but you have to.
Which tells you a lot about what it means to be an associate.
It sure does. Hey, they're having a big week in law firm life. Stuff's happening in their market. It's a lot of pressure. I don't think that can be discounted. When I told some of the partners that I was close with or worked with that I was going to go into the recruiting side of the firm, some of the response I got was, lawyers don't do that. You're making a mistake. Others thought it was great, but it was way too late to go back because I knew that I wanted to do something different. And recruiting was a logical step because I was really involved in the summer program and on campus, and it was something that I really enjoyed. And it actually made a lot of sense for the firm to have a former associate in that role, because when you'd go on campus and students would say, what's it like to work there? You can be like, actually, I know, because I did it for 5+ years as a lawyer. But it is a risk. And I didn't know what was going to be next. I wasn't thinking in terms of 10 years at that point. I was thinking, this is more fun than what I'm doing. I like doing this. It inspires me. I stay at the firm. Let's see where it goes. But I didn't have a plan.
Interesting. I meet people like yourself quite a lot. There's a lot of us who go to any job. That job could be in-house job. That job could be your big law job, it could be government. This sort of what I call for now job. Does the job for now, or this buys me time, or it gives me learning. You can view it as a complacency. You can view it as a stepping stone. You can view it as buying time. You can view it in many other ways. What are your thoughts about for now?
For
I
now.
mean, because some of us go to big law and say, I will be a partner, or join in-house and say, I'll be the general counsel. That's one way to start it, and I tend to be more on that side. But there's also another way of saying, I'll come in for now.
Yeah, I view that in two different ways. So when I say I was doing recruiting, didn't have a plan, that wasn't a for now job. That was, this is where I want to go, and we'll see what develops from it. I think for now jobs are fine, but not to go into. And by that, you can be in a job for a while, and then at some point you realize, I'm not really in love with this anymore, or I can really do this without much thought. So this is now a for now job, like something will be next. And I do think that's fine, but I think, especially in the legal realm, we fall into for now going for a very long time. So if you're going to decide something is a for now job, put an end date on when now ends. I don't think there's anything wrong with that short term, as long as you realize it's time for you to do something else. And I think for now jobs really develop when you've run out of the learn and earn model. And by that, the theory out there is your job you should either earn or learn, ideally both. But if it's not either, it's time to go. And if it's just one, it may be a for now job for you, or might be perfectly suited to your life at the moment, which is also perfectly fine, I think.
I like that for now, learn or earn or both. So you put effectively either timeline or achievement of the milestone before your next move. Is that how you're thinking about it?
Yeah, it is how I think about it. And I think like a for now job develops because nothing changes. We have a whole industry where we talk about change management on end, and people are scared of change. But the flip side of that is if your job isn't changing and you're doing the same thing for 4 years, you're probably going to get pretty bored. And you're probably in a for now job because you need things to be changing. But yeah, I think I don't know what the time limit is. Everybody's different. You maybe have something in your life where this is perfect for you, maybe for a month and maybe for 5 years. We're all kind of overachievers in this ecosystem. We want to do the next best thing. We want to help develop. We want to create. We want to innovate. And that involves not being bored, I think.
Yeah, no, I do think law attracts high achieving population, maybe the most intelligent, maybe not the most intelligent, but at the very least high achieving, what I call upward rising. And then, so that means that by the time we're actually in the workforce, that's highly unlikely to change because we have a career path of essentially jumping through hoops that are increasing difficulty from the day we show up on planet Earth. That's how you can view a career path of any lawyer. And that's the case. It's highly unlikely to change when you join a workforce. But I'm curious, because I do want to explore this for now job topic. There is a sort of an inherent risk in taking a for now job. I like your model of learning or earning and having milestones. How else can you, what are the risks? And then my favorite question is, how do you de-risk it? What other things you can put in place to gain comfort, to assure yourself, relieve yourself of anxiety, of better tomorrow. And really, most importantly, because many of us who go to law care about our career paths, de-risk the risk of not continually growing and having an impact.
Those are two different sides of the risk coin. And that's when it comes to the for now job, the risk of staying too long and pigeonholing yourself into a job, which is what you've done and will always do. I do think that's a risk. Risk is, we all work in legal departments. We're all about mitigating risk or understanding risk, and it comes up a lot.
I call it flirting with risk.
Flirting with risk, absolutely. That's what
I don't mitigate risk. I flirt with it. It's my favorite thing in the world.
I love that. I think personal goals should be flirting with risk. I love it, and you know why? Everything is risky. To
live is to risk.
Stability is a bit of a facade. One of my pet peeves has always been like during the pandemic, and every webinar starts with in these uncertain times. Stability is never really there. Your whole life could change tomorrow. We all work at companies that anything could happen. Look what happened over the weekend with one of the biggest companies in the news right now. Total leadership change. That can happen anywhere. We think
that, my friend, is not a risk. That is just a failure in leadership.
But if you were there and you put all your oats into one basket, or whatever the phrase is, that's a big change. There's a risk for you. Everything's a risk. And the only way to de-risk it is to really, I think you de-risk something if you understand why you're doing it. I'm not going to use today as an example, but if I decided to come to a non-public, very small company with a funky name, there's a risk that it may not be a widely known company or even around in 5 years. And that's a risk that I understood. But the benefits of being in that environment, what you're going to learn from it, can outweigh the risk. Everything's a risk.
Yeah, no, I have a specific experience with risk, which is maybe slightly an outlier. I've had things taken completely away from me and start from beginning many times in life, actually, many more than I probably should have, or my family should have. And I have a lot of conviction that you can take a lot of things away, but you cannot take this. And I have a lot of conviction that my lessons, my skills are portable, my reputation, they're mine to keep. You can take my worldly possessions. You can even take away my status. But you will never take away what's here. And I have a lot of trust that all I need is there and I can figure it out. And I've proven it many times and many times again. So when I have conversations with lawyers and I see fear in their eyes, and I know fear when I see it, because I now seen a lot of flavors of fear, I really do remind them, look, there is something about most lawyers' career can be characterized as increasing jumping through the hoops. And I started walking them through, well, what have you learned from hoop number 1 and hoop number 2 and hoop number 3? And you can learn a lot of substantive things, but one of the things you can learn is the conviction that you can figure crap out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the most important thing to learn, that you can do that. If you can have conviction about that, then it almost doesn't matter what's added or taken away from your plate. And heck, even if the plate is taken away from you.
Yes, and I think you've hit on something which you do have lawyers watching this. So I will say the thing that I always find surprising is that lawyers who have been through all these firms in-house and have this incredible experience are so intelligent and often put themselves into a box that they can't get out of. I am this type of lawyer. I need to go do this somewhere else. But what you just said is exactly right. It's all about the experiences you gain so you can do something else if it comes up. If you want to try something new, you have the knowledge, you have the legal acumen. There's no reason that because you were an M&A lawyer from day one, you need to be an M&A lawyer until retirement or anything within there. But what you just said, Olga, I think nails it. We need to start thinking about the power we've gotten by experiences and our ability to apply them elsewhere. You can solve problems. It's not just going to be the sort of problem that you dealt with before. Everything's going to be a little different. In legal operations, I got a new problem every season, and I take what I learned from the last one and you apply it to the new one. Everything's new, and that's great. But yeah, we should not pigeonhole ourselves. Everybody's a superhero.
Can be,
Yes.
should be,
Yeah.
can choose to be. That's definitely a choice. In those weak moments, again, I had a few in my life. It's helpful to talk to some, and your family could be in one place and they have a point of view. I found my professional network to be super helpful. I've done many pivots, never had the same job twice. And having talked to somebody is actually very important. And especially if they've been and done there and understand their point of view, not necessarily borrowing wholesale what their experiences are, because none of them is truly an Olga, so to speak. But nonetheless, understanding that. And I think you and I have talked before a lot about this advisory board concept. or the sounding board, however you describe it. How do you think about it? I'm just curious, as you go through transitions, as you take various project things, for now jobs, forever jobs that turn out to be for now job that should never be part of your life.
Nobody's an Olga, you know that. Nobody could, your board of directors has to be vast. You are everywhere, and you know everybody in the system and beyond. But I agree with you, fam. It depends what you're bouncing off of people. I think that there are times when you want a career coach for whatever reason may be happening immediately, but I think there are more times when we're faced with a choice, whatever that choice may be. And the people who you interact with in different ways, whether that be at work, in working together in CLOC and knowing each other that way, working together directly, or people you've worked with in the past, they can often give you a perspective on yourself that maybe you don't see immediately. And I think that's really hard for all of us, because being self-reflective doesn't mean that you're going to figure out what you're best at. So my trusted sources are a mishmash of people. Some of my former managers at other jobs are the people I go to first whenever I have a decision to make professionally, because they know me and they can give a perspective on what they thought really got me going or what I really wasn't good at. Same with former coworkers, peers, and quite frankly, even people that reported to you. If you've developed the right relationship in that realm, they'll give you honest feedback, which may be hard, but it's just something to think about. And I also think there are times the universe works for you in a lot of ways. You don't realize it. Very long time ago, I was really fortunate to be given access to a management coach when I left practicing law and had to manage people, right? Totally different. And we did that for a while. And that person to this day is still the first person I call if I'm ever making a job switch, if I'm facing something difficult where I have to get over it in terms of work interactions and professional interactions. And I now get that advice for free. I view it that way. But they have an insight into you, which we should be welcoming, even if it's hard to hear, because your trusted circle, whoever they may be, are giving you truths or observations, not to be mean and not to put you down, but to make you think more about yourself. And I think that can be really hard. It's also hard to be one of those people, because if I'm going to call you, Olga, and be like, hey, I'm thinking about doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to ask you for honest feedback, you have to have a pretty strong relationship with me to be like, I think you're making a mistake. You're not good at doing that. That is not your strength.
It's really funny. People actually ask me for advice, and I'm known for being unfiltered self. And some of them take it like champs, and some of them have a moment. You asked, you came to me. But so let's actually talk about two things. Let's talk about mentors, because I think that's important. And I do want to talk about advice, because I have a point of view there. But let's start with mentor. I have this thing. I feel sometimes asking for mentorship is like asking for intimacy on the first date. It's like super uncomfortable and weird and murky, and you're not quite sure what you're asking for and what you're getting. So I've developed over years now this model where I adopt the mentor. You may be my mentor, you may not even know about it. The reality of it is that there's a lot of information on the internet available about, if I want to have a playbook about how to become Adam, like there is a recipe. It's called LinkedIn profile. It may miss some ingredients, but if I want to answer the question how to become a version of Adam, with some LinkedIn and Googling, I think I will get, I may not get a recipe of a code here, but I may get 90% there, which is all I need. So I, at this point, that's how I view mentorship. A lot of, and then frankly, board of directors. In my view, it's a foldable structure that changes all the time, and I don't need your permission for you to be on it. How do you think through that mentorship and advisory board? How do you assemble it? How do you keep in touch? How flexible is it? Is it changing with where your adventures?
I like where you're going with this, because I think I've always put mentorship into a different, almost more formal category than what the board of directors are. But I think you're right that there's so much overlap there. And I also fully agree with you that I feel like when it comes to mentorship, people who are my mentors probably don't know they're my mentors. And I have ended up mentoring a lot of people junior to me, not even in the same industry, just because of circumstance.
Yeah, and you did not necessarily have this proposal, would you be my mentor? That would be superfluous in many of those conversations, right?
Yeah, but it can work. I've seen it work. When I was at MetLife, we had a really big internship program, and it was law school, college, and even high school at some point. And for the college kids in particular, like I was overseeing the program, but often became their mentor should they stay on. And they didn't stay in the department necessarily, but we still mentoring. And even after the fact, I still talk to a number of them just to hear what's going on and what they're facing, what they want to do with life. Because post-pandemic, everybody's got ideas. So that's totally off the wall, which I love. But it is really awkward to ask for mentorship. But I think, and this is a topic I haven't thought about before right now, Olga, I think there have been times when I've basically asked somebody to be my mentor without saying mentor, and it has worked, but it takes sometimes, I think, even longer than the informal, it just happened mentorship, because you're trying to forge a mentorship relationship and you don't really know what that means, and neither do they, and it can be awkward. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. You're right.
I think the reason I say that, because success in life is predicted by one's ability to iterate on the theme. Meaning, like, if you're pivoting a few times in life, you should have a system of how you solicit advice and mentorship and advisory board consistently, not as random act of mentorship. And so that's why for me, I developed this concept of not asking, although I actually don't mind asking. Like, you can talk to my husband. I asked him out, and he was confused and dazzled all at the same. I do that. I have no problem asking, but sometimes I just think it's adopting something is actually easier than asking. It puts less pressure, and that is why the system of mentorship that I think I developed it helps me be flexible and consistently pivot. And that, I think that's helpful. And asking sometimes creates friction or anxiety that I would not, pressure that I would not expect, would not want to deal with, maybe.
Now that we're talking about it and you got my wheels moving, my rusty brain is opening, so you probably don't know this, but when I came in-house, like, I was terrified to speak in front of people. I wasn't good at it. I didn't like it. Never been asked to do it before. And through all the stuff that we do together, like, we talk a lot in front of people. We share a lot of knowledge. There have been times in that area where I went to somebody I didn't know well and said, you just watched me do that. What are your reactions? What do you think? And often strangers will be more honest and helpful with you than, say, your husband, Olga, because they don't really have anything to lose.
Hey, lying to my face is a recipe for happy marriage. So totally.
Thinking now about one time I did that and how that person actually became a mentor to me on a repeated basis, because it gave me really honest feedback and pointers. And I said, wow, you're really good at this. Can we keep talking? And we did over the next 3 years. And that is somebody who's actually on not on the direct board with my life, but I'm like, oh, we have this special project for you. And then I'll call that person.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because people who've been, I actually love, it's interesting observation that people who've known you for a long time, they come with a baggage. They have with expectations, they have a view of you, they may even have, definition for success. Like Kevin has a definition for success for me. It's really fun to talk to him about. So it's really interesting. Sometimes it actually is easier to talk to strangers who just met you and take you as you are today. And that actually brings me to advice. What is your thoughts about advice? How do you ask for it? And then what do you do with it?
That's really hard. And I think you first have to prep yourself. If you're going to ask for advice or feedback, you're going to potentially get something that you didn't want to hear. And it can hurt. you think you're doing everything great and maybe there's something you can do better. I think that can hurt, or it can be reassuring that, yes, I know I'm great at this, and that doesn't really help you all that much. It depends on your situation. So like a little management tip that I got was a few years ago, I wanted to ask my team of direct reports for honest feedback on what I could be doing differently, better, more inclusively, really how to get what was on their mind that I wasn't fulfilling in my job as their manager. And asking that question to your team as a group, you're not going to get much usually unless you have a really special relationship, but people are reluctant, and they're reluctant to talk in front of each other if they don't feel comfortable and safe. One of the interesting tactics was I went to a very junior person in the department, and I said, I'm going to be asking my team for feedback on me. What are your thoughts on my approach? And he was like, I'm not your boss, by the way. So whatever you tell me doesn't matter. And let's just say his name was George. He said, I think here's what I observe in how you interact, and here's what I think could be better. I said, great, thank you. When I went to my team, I said, I spoke to George, and here's what he said when I asked him for feedback. And opening that door, showing that I had asked somebody else, that I was relaying it, that it wasn't entirely flattering, really got people to open up with their opinions and what they thought I should be doing. But you're making yourself very vulnerable, and vulnerability is much more in post-pandemic, so go for it. But you have to get that rolling, because if people report to you, they may be reluctant to give you feedback, and if people are your peers, they may be reluctant, and quite frankly, sometimes even your boss manager will be reluctant. Showing you're open to it and processing it is the most important thing you can show to people in order to get more advice.
I agree. I think for me, I have two principles when I ask for advice. I definitely think the sort of part of understanding where they come from, their experience and their point of view, the sort of series of whys, is very important. I think if you understand where they come from and the result they reached, you can assess to what extent that is where you are and how it matches to your journey. I think the other part of it is, I usually illustrate this with a simple asking for direction. So you ask people how to get to SFO if you live in the Bay Area. You ask me, I'll tell you Uber. I love Uber. I'll pay a little extra because I live in the middle of nowhere and I want to get there without worrying too much. My husband, on the other hand, like being very efficient with his money. He will swear by BART. It's his favorite mode of transportation. You ask my neighbor, they have a bunch of cars and they love driving everywhere, and they will find the parking there. There are many ways to get to SFO. that is the point of this. And that tends to be true about anything in a career. There are many ways to fill in your destination. And the chances are that when somebody gives you advice, they will give you a method of getting to proverbial SFO that may not be good for you given your circumstances. But understanding how they got to that conclusion is actually important. So that's why the whys and what made them choose the path is almost as important, that understanding, that openness to that. So I'm definitely with you on that. But I also feel that 90+% of advice, specific advice, should be disregarded. The lessons of how they got there is like, it's great that my husband liked to take BART, and I support him in that adventure. And I will still choose my path to SFO because it works better for me. And I can guarantee you that both of us will fly to our destination safely. And if you can generalize from that, I understand his why, I support his why. He can definitely do that. I've learned from that conversation of how he makes that decision, whether it applies to me. and how I will go forward in making my travel decision going forward. And all of that was an open mind and full understanding and making a decision that works uniquely for me. And therefore, it may look like I disregarded what he said. I didn't. I took his lessons. I just didn't take his exact method that works perfectly for him.
So we need to save your SFO example for it's such a good legal operations thing. That's perfect that we need to talk about why I love legal ops, because that is it in a nutshell. I think there are two things that strike me, and I realize we're a little off topic, but the why I get, but I don't always know your why. And if I ask you why you think that, I'm starting to get into what experiences you have and what your situation is to make that become a piece of advice or feedback to me. And in doing so, I'm actually starting to become your mentor by even asking you those questions, because I'm starting to understand more about you and what drives you and what shapes your view of the world. And I think that's a really important point that you make. I think it's fair to prioritize some of that criticism you get or advice. I try not to ignore it all, because I think that can get into the echo chamber of I don't really agree with that, so they're wrong and they don't really know as much as they should about this topic. There's something there. It may not be the number one piece of advice that you.
At a minimum, they're right about their experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Or they're just messing with you, which can happen too. But nobody's really going to do that if you're being.
No, Adam, nobody would mess with you. Why?
People mess all the time, but when you open yourself up, you're like, how can I do this better? Nobody's going to be like, I don't know, whatever, something mean. Nobody's going to do that. They're going to say, maybe you should use more slides or whatever it may be. It's innocuous as that. But yeah, I agree with you. Look for the themes, right? You're not going to ask just one person for advice. You're hopefully going to ask more than one. There should be themes. If it's all over the place, then
no, I think themes is another way to ask many whys and understand where they come from. I think that's actually, I love that, looking for the themes, because the themes will help you get the ultimate right decision for you if you understand what kind of milestones and themes they were reaching along the way.
Can I use your SFO thing to totally sidetrack us into legal ops for a second? Why I like it?
Yeah, I was about to go there, so please go ahead. I was actually going to ask you about why do extracurriculars like CLOC, but yeah. Sure, let's take my SFO to legal ops. Let's do that.
For me, it's EWR, right? I'm a Newark person. Even though I live in New York City. Newark is always, it's an easier airport for a lot of reasons. There are like 8 ways to get there. I know them all, and when I'm making my decision, it's what am I looking for? And it's efficiency and lack of frustration for me, right? So I might Uber one day, I might train another day, I might bus if I'm really going out there, or I can't drive because I don't have a car. But there's all these options, and that's exactly what we do day to day, right? If I'm going to be asked to solve a problem or put in a system or deal with something, I need to know the different ways that it's being handled and what's possible. And then you have to know what your lens is to make the right decision for your organization and which way to go. So I love that example, because that's like what we do in professionally every day. Granted, going to the airport for me is always a little bit of a hassle, and I struggle on it, but
I actually do think that's why I use the analogy to going to an airport, is because it is a hassle. It is stressful, and different people handle the stress of travel differently. And getting to airport, especially when traffic conditions and you live in a metropolitan area and you have all these choices and the costs and timing and all the things you're balancing, it is a perfect, relatable situation.
And then the bad side of that is once you're there, then the fun really starts, right? Then you have to do everything else. But getting there is an operational problem that we all face, and that's what we do at work, and I think it's super fun. But let's talk about what you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I'm coming to the end. I have maybe a few more questions. We would definitely fill 40 minutes easily. Then I had plans for 20, so there we go. None of us likes to talk, so that's the problem. With that in mind, I think we framed the problem of legal ops, operationally speaking, pretty well. What do you think are the characteristics you need to be a successful legal ops professional or leader, however you want to handle it?
Leadership, let's start with just the organization. I think leadership is like the next level for a lot of people. And I think wanting to be a good leader is a little bit different from wanting to be in legal ops, because I think the most important thing about being successful in legal ops, and what I look for if I'm hiring people on a resume, curiosity. If you can illustrate that you've been curious in how things work, I think that innate quality is what really sets somebody apart here. You want to know, how does your business work? How does it make money? Right now in our world, what do these technology innovations really mean? How do they work? What are the good things? What are the bad things? And then we talked about industry involvement. I was at a conference last week where one of the panelists said, we're all really good at working with people. And I thought about that a lot. And I think we all need to be really good at working with people, and curiosity about people and how they interact with work and how they interact with things changing around them and advancements and all the things that we talk about as challenges to us getting things done are all about understanding and being curious about people and then how your organization works. So I think that's just a trait which cannot be understated. And it's not something you can just say, I'm curious. You're really into it or you're not. And if you're not really into it, this might not be the gig for you, because everything here is new all the time and you have to be curious about learning it. If you're going to ask me for the hard skill, organization is the number one skill here. I would love to say it's all these other things that we could do, but being organized is pivotal to success in legal ops. Being curious is pivotal to advancing and rocketing within the industry.
I'm with you. I think law generally, being organized is actually you halfway there. Like I don't know, remember your days as associates? Like we move things I organize stuff professionally. Like you should see my folders.
So we're never going to diss on like law firms and the lawyers there. But when I was working there, one of my colleagues was like, oh my God, I was working with this partner. They can never do this. They're always last minute. It's always disorganized. And I just said, if they were good at it, they wouldn't need you.
No, that's what a good associate does. So I'm totally with you. It's time to say goodbye. We covered a lot of things.
Wow.
45 minutes later, we could be talking for a long time. Part 2, maybe?
I will do this we are so overdue. I will do this with you anytime. I would love to do this with you, like live in front of other people. We got to hang out in London last year. Like I saw you
was good, wasn't it?
DeltaCon. Next time we have a run-in, we should plan to run it, not just.
And you're a testament that I'm a better company in person, right?
I think that what you've done is stellar. Your view on the ecosystem, if people aren't coming to you for advice and thoughts, they're missing out. You have a view that so few people have. And again, you're curious and you want to explore things, and you are a wealth of information. So I'm just
I heard you too. I feel the same way about you. And we covered a lot of ground. I'm really grateful we had this conversation. I enjoyed meeting you in person, and I've had an opportunity to do this many times this year, and I see you every month at CLOC EOC, and I still manage to learn a lot from you. For folks who have been part of this conversation, what is two maybe, takeaways you want them to have so that they can implement in their day and maybe do legal ops better?
Obviously, be curious. And that goes for everything we talked about. Be curious about what's happening in the ecosystem, what's happening in legal ops, what's happening in house, what's happening with you. Ask for that advice. Just be curious. And then the other thing, I said this to somebody else recently, I'm in this really interesting phase where I'm just so excited by what other people are doing that I just want everybody to keep cheering each other on. There's so much happening. People are doing so much cool stuff. They're coming up with new ways to do legacy things or new ways to do new things. And we're moving away from the do more with less, and we're moving into the do things creatively. And people have great ideas in this ecosystem, and I love it. So keep cheering each other on and keep learning from each other. That's what I'm doing.
I love that. Curiosity, organization, and yes, cheer everyone on. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for stopping by. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Notes to My Legal Self. Know someone who'd make a great guest? Let us know. Self-nominations are encouraged. They are an act of courage. Remember, the future of law is bright. Enjoy your in-house practice. It's an adventure of a lifetime. See you soon.